the concept of Sealand was discussed pre-transplant for me, and then post-transplant is when it really started to take shape and brainstorm it properly. But through having my transplant and being in hospital and like just medical waste is so gnarly. Like there's so much, and I understand why from a safety perspective, but there's just so much medical waste. Just like needles and plastic and bags and sanitary and all these different things. It's like everything's what single use. And then personally, someone died and I was able to survive and extend my life. Therefore, I became like I upcycled a person into me. And that just turns out to be like Sealand's USP is like we upcycle things. We create value from waste.
Today, I'm joined by Jasper Eales, designer, entrepreneur, and co-founder of Sealand. His journey is a wild one, guys. From surviving a liver transplant to building a globally recognized sustainable brand, he's faced challenges most people can't even begin to imagine. In this episode, we dive into his journey, the lessons he's learned, and what it really takes to build something truly meaningful. So I was checking your Instagram out, and I saw you broke your back, like the beginning of this year, right? What happened?
I don't know if it was to do with my peroxided hair or if it was just to do with bad luck. I was snowboarding in France and it was day 2. And I was with my wife and my wife's family, and they're quite competitive, but it didn't really have anything to do with the situation. Like they're competent skiers, and I was the first day I had my daughter with us as well. She's 4 years old, so she was like, learning to ski and getting into the swing of things. Day 1, I had her after ski school. So day 2 was my wife's turn to look after her, and I went with my wife's folks and sister, and they wanted to go do this like double black, like super downhill route. And I was like,
it's like off piste.
No, on piste, but it's just like it's a Olympic downhill track. But I knew it was going to be icy. It wasn't going to be nice. I ride a snowboard, they ski. Like it just wasn't my cup of tea. So I was like, no, I'm just going to hang out in the park and just go get used to the jumps. But day 2, I'm not a pro snowboarder. I've snowboarded many times in my life.
Okay,
but you shouldn't necessarily go to the park right at the beginning of a trip, but I felt like I'm just going to go onto the easy, onto the medium-sized jumps and just kind of like feel it out, which I was doing. And I did a couple laps in the park, and then there was a guy who was a lot better. I was watching him, and that's generally how I teach myself with snowboarding. I watch other guys and girls and see how they do things and try kind of do what they're doing, but to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was going for my 4th or 5th loop through the park, and I was just like, it's called capping the jump, where you don't like clear it perfectly because there's like a ramp and then there's a gap and then there's a landing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you land on the top of the landing as opposed to downhill of the landing, it's called capping.
Mm-hmm.
Landing on the downhill is where it's like the transition is really nice. The landing's much softer and you get nice speed into the next one. Whereas when you cap it, you like kind of lose your speed and your momentum a bit, and it's a little bit harder on the knees. So I was like, I'd been capping the jumps, and that's because I was being cautious.
So you were going too slow.
So I wasn't just this particular lap.
Yeah.
And then it came to the last jump, and then I was like, no, I'm not capping this one again. And also the last jump has like a little bit of like more kick to it,
mm-hmm.
a little more pop to it. And so I went in with a little bit more speed. I hit it, and it just popped me more than I expected, and it kind of flicked. Like with snowboarding, when you hit a jump, you want to hit it like with your rail, like with a flat board. If you go onto the rail, then you're going to kind of do in the air. You're going to come down on your rail, which you don't really want to do unless you really know what you're doing. So I come and I hit the jump, but I hit it, and it pops me a little bit off. And then in the air, I realize, okay, I'm coming down, and I just landed a little bit too much on my front, the nose of the board, and a little bit too much on the rail, and I'm just off center,
mm-hmm.
and it pops me out. So I land all the way, it comes down onto my left bum cheek. So I've got momentum coming down as well as compression coming down onto my bum. And so I land, compress, and twist, and I just hear something go.
Oh.
but also these sort of things, you're like in the moment, you're like, was there a sound? Was it not a sound?
Mm.
I'm like lying here, I'm sore, but like, how sore am I? Am I going to be fine? Like, it's day 2. Like, I'm not thinking I broke my back. I'm thinking like, oh, I've just winded myself and I just need to like, just toughen up and wait a few minutes and it's going to be fine. And like a few minutes go by, no one comes to me. I'm still lying there. I'm like, oh, still sore lying there. I'm like, okay, after like 10 minutes, I'm like, I better try roll over onto my stomach and like roll over and then like arch my back, do like a cat cow. And like, oh no, this is sore. Then eventually I'm like, I need to get back home. Like, it's the middle of the day, I need to get back home. That's my mission. I was by myself because my parent-in-laws, my sister-in-law, they had cruised off to a different section. Anyways, long story short, I managed to, after about 15-20 minutes, I managed to like stand up and like support my body on my thighs with my arms and my hands, and I ride down for like 200 meters to, it's like a mid-mountain club. And I get there and I just like lie down on my back. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was so hectic. It was so sore. I lie down and then I was like, I need some help now. So then I phone, and I hadn't phoned anyone yet. I hadn't told anyone. So I phoned my sister-in-law because I knew they'd gone deeper into the mountains. They had to come back. And then she's like, okay, cool, we'll be there shortly. She gets there. And then she tries to help me up. And at that's when I start to feel like, oh, this is actually really sore. And at that point, then I couldn't stand by myself. So then I was like supporting myself on her. And then she helped me. We got into to get to this midway pub, which is called Le Folie Douche. Anybody who knows Le Folie Douche knows that it's the place to be in that area. It's like a real good place to go hang out and party. Anyways, we get into the gondola, which was just like super painful. Get down, then I've got to jump out of the gondola, which she helps me.
What is gondola?
Gondola is like the cable car for Tail Mountain,
right,
but like a big version of that.
Okay.
So, well, it's like one of those basically. So you climb in, there's a bench inside there. I kind of managed to get myself to lie down on the bench.
True, because you've got to get off the mountain.
Off the mountain, yeah. So what I should have done is I should have called for help, and then they would have came with like the rescue services, and then they would have either airlifted me off, or they would have come, and it's called like the blood wagon. And basically the blood wagon is basically like a good skier. He'll come and he's got like this sled, which is like a metal tray, which he pulls and you kind of straps you in. So it's kind of like a stretcher, which they pull you down the mountain on.
Okay.
But in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I've like my insurance covers this or that. And like, I was fully insured, but like all these things going through my mind, all I'm thinking is I just need to go home and rest and I'll be fine. But as the adrenaline starts to wear off and I'm getting out the gondola, I'm realizing my legs are like conking in because they're like compensating for my back. So then I'm like full support, get off the mountain, find this little leveled area, kind of like the table here as a wall. So I'm stand, I just like lie my upper body on the table flat, waiting for my brother-in-law to bring our car from our house to come fetch me. And that whole exercise, once I got to lying flat, waiting for him took like 50 minutes. And those 50 minutes I went from like I need to go to home to being like I need to go to the hospital.
Wow. So
and then
pain getting worse.
This pain was getting worse and worse, and adrenaline, I suppose the adrenaline was just running off. And then we went straight to the like local mediclinic, was super quick, got an x-ray. They as I went in, they're like, what do you think where's the problem? And it's all French and I don't speak French. And then I'm like, no, I think it's like down between my L1 and L3 vertebrae. Have the x-ray, yeah. L3 compression fracture. It's like a few chunks broken off it, and then it's like squished to like half the size. And then it went through like a series of transitions from one hospital to another and another, from the CT scan test to another place, and then eventually had surgery there. It was amazing. No. This was like over a series of like 3 or 4 days, and all they gave me was like one Panado every few hours.
Why not anything else?
I suppose my case is a little more complicated, medications and stuff which I do take and what I can take. So, but also I don't know. It felt like I needed a lot more than that.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, also when we walked in, but you mentioned earlier that you're very familiar with being in hospital and stuff like that. Do you want to touch on what you mean by that? Like, what's the story there?
Yeah, very happy to talk about that. So I was diagnosed and I was probably like 14, 15, with Crohn's disease and PSC. Crohn's disease is a condition of your colon, where you basically get inconsistencies within your colon, causes blockages. But I never really had many issues with that. But connected to that was PSC, which is basically a condition of the liver. Both of them are inflammatory related or disorders.
But they're not connected.
They're not connected. No, there's no proof that they are connected, but it's to do more with sort of autoimmune disorders and inflammation.
Okay.
And that's kind of the connection between the two of them. So they have similar triggers and they have similar things like that. But the PSC was always dormant, but the PSC is something which there wasn't a huge amount of knowledge about. And this is the liver disorder. It was fine, and I medicated for my Crohn's throughout my life. Lived a pretty normal life, other than the fact that my mates used to always kind of tease me that my parents just made this up so I couldn't drink during high school and teenage years and so on.
So you actually didn't drink?
No, I did.
Okay.
But not as much as everybody else, and I
Right.
probably shouldn't have drank as much as I did, but I did. I definitely did. I still had a fun time, and probably shouldn't have drank as much as I did.
Why? What
But
happened?
No, nothing happened other than the normal things that happen to you as a teenager growing up and
Right.
getting drunk.
Right.
Anyway, so I had these disorders, grew up knowing that they were there, having to medicate myself, not with major side effects of the medication and not with having too much problems. And then let's call it 2013, towards the end of 2013, I just come back from like a year of traveling with my girlfriend after like post uni sort of travel in
You're
the
how
States.
old? No.
I was probably like 23,
Mhm.
I would say. I was 23, she was 20, 21, 20, I was 24, she was 21, 22.
Mhm.
We'd spent a year traveling in the US and Mexico. We did a snowboarding season. Then we went and so we did a snowboarding season, made money. We bought a van, modified it, and then traveled through the States for like a month traveling. And then we missioned into Mexico through Baja California for probably another like 4 or 5 months. We lived with a Mexican family like on the beach in a rad little village with a few hundred people, just like eating fish and rice and surfing the best waves in the world.
Wow.
So we had just come back from like an epic trip, super good, and kind of getting back into swing of things. And then I was kind of went and had my checkup, because I normally have checkups quite frequently every few months. So I hadn't had any checkups, had a checkup, and then kind of got the news that my liver condition had changed a bit with it, and it is not looking so good. And that that once it gets to a certain point, it's called sclerosis, where you basically have scarring of the liver. Liver is quite a clever it's a very smart organ in terms of it regenerates and it can regrow and fix itself. But once it reaches a point of sclerosis, it can go into a state of no return. And it happens in my condition was through the gallbladder. So you have problems with the gallbladder. Anyways, I was told I need to have a liver transplant. The process with that is basically saying that you only have one liver in this country. They don't do partial transplants to the liver, so it's a full transplant. So you get put onto a waiting list. Firstly, you go in, you have to go spend like a week in hospital where they do all these tests on your body to like get exact understanding of the state of your body and the status of your body, so that when the time comes, firstly to evaluate whether you're eligible in terms of you like healthy enough and stuff to accept and survive the operation, and that therefore you'll become eligible, which I was, and then understand your body enough so that when you do have the operation that they know what they're dealing with. And you get put onto a waiting list. So I got put on a waiting list, and that was an interesting time. I had to wait for it's indefinite how long you wait. There's a huge shortage of organ donors in this country, and there's a huge list of people who require them, regardless whether it's kidneys or livers and the others, or all the other things. I was lucky I didn't have to wait too long. Actually, I waited 10 months.
But 10 months waiting for something you don't know is going to come.
Yeah, I know, it's super long. Yeah, and it's just, and also within that period of time, you wait, and you have to be with a certain time frame from the hospital, like because
Wow.
the way that a liver transplant works is somebody has to kind of pass away, and then they've got to be a listed donor. You've got to be the right body size, the right blood type. All kinds of things have to match up for it to be a match. And then you also want to make sure that it's a healthy organ that you're going to be receiving. Because I don't want to take out a bad organ and put in like an average organ, like
Fair enough. Yeah.
especially where I was in my life, and the rest of my body was all good. So
And you're, yeah.
I wanted to get like I wanted a good organ. I wanted like a good chance. And
So what you needed this transplant. Without it,
well, yeah, I suppose I mean, everyone's gonna have different views, but the people who I backed and I believed in, who the absolute specialists and professors of liver in this country, they were absolutely, they wouldn't have suggested if I didn't. You're gonna have natural healers and so on. You're gonna say, maybe you can, treat yourself and heal yourself differently, but that's not the way that I'm definitely open to different suggestions, but I know when to embrace like medical technology.
Sure.
And the time was there. I could see it. I was yellow for one. Like when you have a
Jaundice.
unhealthy liver, you jaundice. I was like walking around like super yellow.
Quick question, and sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just have some questions. So you just went up for like a normal checkup, which you were a bit late on doing. But did you have jaundice before that?
Yeah, I had
Like, were there no signs leading up to this? Like, it seems like you were fine, and then all of a sudden.
Yeah, but that's the way this disorder works. It can it's just dormant, and then it can be activated.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I suppose that there were certain little symptoms here and there, but you also, prior to it, you don't really know all the symptoms. Like I've also always been somebody who's like, ignorance is bliss. And I don't like to research things too much. I don't like to get too, because then I worry about it.
Yeah, I'm the same.
If I don't think about it, then I don't worry about it. If I don't think about or worry about it, then I don't have it until you have it.
Yeah.
But I prefer to live like that. Sometimes,
Got to balance it.
you got to balance it out. Like your mind's such a powerful tool. So I've always lived my mind with I live my life with like a very strong, positive, healthy mindset, and I find it much easier to do that when I'm not worrying about things. Sometimes out of your control. And I mean, now I know when I need to embrace the right things and embrace technology or embrace medicine. Anyway, so yeah, I waited 10 months, and then.
Were you in hospital at this time?
No, all I was doing was focusing on like staying as fit and healthy as I possibly could. It's like I was very, drained and tired, and I was definitely like, I was just feeling like 60% all the time, but knowing that basically when you go into the procedure, it's a super gnarly operation. Basically, they cut me from my sternum here to my belly button to my hip around, like open up your stomach and like lift your ribs open and access. It's a very gnarly operation in terms of also like the way, the intricacy and the amount of valves and like stuff and connections and so on. So, I was expecting to go have this procedure. It can take, over 10 hours easily, the operation. You can have multiple blood transfusions. You can be in hospital post-operation for over 3 months. But all of those are going to be on the basis of how healthy you are going into it, how healthy the organ is that you're receiving, and how long the time frame between the organ being harvested from the donor body and then put into your body. So the time frame between harvesting to putting into your body is super important. And
which is why you had to be near the hospital.
Exactly. So like they want you to be there within like an hour and a half to 3 hours. So travel was limited. Surfing was limited to where I surfed and for how long I surfed. It was just an interesting, kind of a weird time.
Where were you mentally when you got the news that you needed a liver transplant?
It was tough. In the back of my mind, I always kind of thought, oh, maybe it'll happen. But again, like, I never embraced the thought into like sitting down and thinking about it. It's just one of those things that came through my mind and like, yeah, maybe one day. That's fine.
Okay. So just sort of like putting it to the side.
Yeah. I mean, not really like purposely putting it to the side, but just
Mm.
getting on with life and knowing that it might be a reality. And if it is, then it is.
Mhm.
But not like thinking about it too much. And then when I was told about it, that just obviously then it's reality. Then you think about it, then you're like, this is it's on. Like, I've got to now embrace this. Now what I need to do in order to do this and do it properly. And that's kind of how I operate in all the things I do. I'm task based. So, whatever the task at hand is, focus on that, get it done, focus on the next thing.
Mhm.
So that was then the task, was to stay healthy so that I could be in the best position to survive the operation and come out of the operation the best way. And operation took, I think, 7 hours or 8 hours versus could have taken way longer. I think I had only one blood transfusion, or yeah, I think only one blood transfusion, and I was in hospital for 10 days.
Wow.
And I
Versus
surfed
3.
within like, I think it was like 5 or 6 months I surfed in. And the main challenge with that was like, just because they basically, when they put you back together, they staple you all, and it's like they cut through all my stomach muscles, and surfing you like hyperextend and arch your back a lot. So it's like super tight, and so it was very hunched over. So that was like my biggest thing, was always like rehabbing and massaging and stretching so I didn't get any hernias,
Mhm.
which I
Right.
didn't.
So you get the transplant, you're out of the hospital in 10 days, and where are you mentally there? Can you remember the
No, it's
feelings?
like, yeah. Well, I mean, not clearly, but I mean, it's a new lease on life. Basically, go from going in feeling and looking yellow, peeing out what looks like tea, coming out, jaundice is gone, white pee, and I survived. So it's like, shit, this is, couldn't ask for anything better than that. Um, and you wake up and it's just like a room full of, just like, I remember, never forget, just waking up in bed and there's just like at least like 15 doctors and professors all just around, like, because yeah, it was just insane. But yeah, the feeling was amazing.
Like,
But then it's like, okay, next task, recovery.
okay. So you've been like that even before the operation. You've always been like task based. I was wondering if it happened since your operation you became task based, but you've always been
No,
like that.
no, I think that's just the way that I'm wired.
Would you say this whole period of your life influenced you in your business life, like when it comes to Sealand?
Undoubtedly, it makes me a fighter. It makes me um, appreciate things. It makes me want to like work for the right things. It makes me want to invest in time into the right people. It makes me want to, yeah, definitely do good. Show the world that there's like that you must invest. Like, the time is one, is the time is short, and if time is short, invest it into the things which matter. Don't waste it. Don't waste time. And I'm continuously reminded, like, life is short. Whether it's, you know, life is short. It can go straight away. You never know what's going to happen to you or to the people around you or to the things that you love. So, I could have been paralyzed when I was snowboarding, and the thing I love, surfing, could have been gone. I could have died snowboarding. Like, who knows? So you just driving a car. So it definitely instills a different approach to life, one of appreciation, a different type of appreciation. I don't regret these challenges I have. Like, I wouldn't wish them upon anybody. But it definitely like crafts me and shapes me into the person I am, the way that I behave, the approach that I take to life. But I would say my like the most important thing that I've applied to my life to be where I am and to achieve the things I have through my challenges and my successes is through like positive mindset. Mind's everything.
So believing in that things will work out.
Just being positive and um, being optimistic, but realistic, but optimistic.
Mm.
Um,
So-
I'm a big believer in being positive. Like positivity connects positivity.
Mm. So do you feel, just touching on this whole endeavor once more, if you were to look at your mindset and how you perceived life before the operation, before the news rather, how much do you feel has changed after the operation? Like when you looked around, were you looking at life like, wow,
I wasn't like
beautiful? Or
no, I wasn't like a full convert. I I grew up in a family which was healthy and respectful, and there was appreciation. There was all those sort of things. So like that was instilled in me from a young age. I loved the outdoors. I loved nature. I loved being creative. I loved doing all those kind of things. It just gave me a deeper view on appreciation and the value for certain things. And it also really showed me, I don't know, a different view on like value creation and waste. One of the things is like the concept of Sealand was discussed pre-transplant for me, and then post-transplant is when it really started to take shape and brainstorm it properly. But
interesting.
discussions were had prior.
Ah.
But through having my transplant and being in hospital and like just medical waste is so gnarly. Like there's so much, and I understand why from a safety perspective, but there's just so much medical waste.
What do you mean by medical waste?
Just like needles and plastic and bags and
Yes.
sanitary and all these different things. It's like it's you can everything's what single use. Everything's single use. And there's lots of intricacies and there's so much wrap packaging, and it for me it feels excessive, but I understand why it's like that. And then personally, someone died and I was able to survive and extend my life, and I used a part of somebody who's dead in order to extend my journey. And therefore I became like I upcycled a person into me.
Mm-hmm.
And that just turns out to be like Sealand's USP is like we upcycle things. We create value from waste. And like theoretically, when you die, you waste away, and whatever happens to you happens. But I then became this like living upcycled person, which just happened. It just is crazy. Like I've never really shared that story massively, but in terms of me personally in a drive, was like, here I am. I'm this person who's now created value and from somebody else's waste, and I've now got this value add to continue my life. I've seen how much waste is generated in hospital. I've got this new lease on life, and all of this energy and excitement and positivity is then getting channeled into this one thing, which turns to be Sealand.
Mm-hmm.
And the journey of Sealand starts in 2015, which is when I had my transplant.
Okay. Man. Fascinating,
Yeah,
eh?
very cool.
Wow. I mean, like that, if that is not a USP, then I don't know what is, but that's an incredible story, man. And I think you were also so young when you were going through all of that. You know, I can't fathom how it must have been, but I mean, respect to you, and it's amazing what you're doing now. I would like to touch on the process that you guys follow to create a backpack.
In essence, what we do is we source a variety of responsible materials or sustainable materials, and those ethically, sustainably, responsibly sourced materials are in a variety of forms. In its purest form is an upcycled material, which is, let's use the lining of the bag as an example. So every single bag's internal lining
Actually,
is,
I've got one of the bags.
Yeah.
I'm gonna quickly bring it.
I mean, even my bag over here, I
Is
can
that
even
your-
use.
is that-
This is one of the newer ones, but it's newer, but it's still
Same concept.
still the same concept. So basically, I'm now referring to the internal lining.
Yeah.
So the internal lining of the bag is an advertising banner.
Mhm.
And these, most retailers are using them. It used to be a wallpaper which was like stuck onto the wall, whereas now as retailers want to interchange them more frequently. So we've created these strategic waste partnerships with some of the largest retail groups in the country. We collect their banner waste, store it, organize it, store it, and then use it for the lining of our bags. So that's upcycling. It's basically creating new value with as little energy input in order to create something of create new value from.
And of course, this backpack will be used indefinitely for as long as possible.
Yeah, so we don't just use any waste. We intercept waste and create new value from it. We don't want to create value for a short period of time and then generate waste again. So which is why we offer the great warranty programs, repair programs, and those sort of things. So any product you buy from Sealand, it's going to come with amazing longevity. So this is also really nice and tactile. It's a durable nylon. So you have your lining material, which is your upcycle material, and then in the beginning, the external was also all upcycled. But as we've evolved, we've realized that the need for scale is also there. So what we still, some of our bags have got upcycled exteriors through yacht sale, the use of sails from sailboats. But we're starting to work with some smarter, more innovative materials. So here's an example. This material is called X-Pack. We work with another material called Cordura, and another material called Econal, and they're all different versions of innovatively, like technically smart recycled fabrics, which you can buy frequently. So if I talk to Econal, for an example, it's a regenerative nylon. This company collects different forms of nylon waste, whether it's fishing nets from the ocean or industrial carpet waste, and the likes of that, and then they go through a process of breaking it down, repelletizing it, making it into a yarn, and then we work with them in the development of a particular weave in order to make a fabric suitable for a bag. So that's kind of like, that speaks to the different materials. And if we go back to your question, you're talking about, like how do you just phone up a company and find their waste material? So again, it takes time. Sealand's almost 10 years old now. Like, we've learned some lessons along the way. One of them being the waste streams is like, waste is there, but it's not always there when you need it. And when you're building a business model which requires waste as like a critical input into making a product, especially when it becomes like one of the USPs of your product, i.e. the unique advertising banners, which creates the lining of our bags, which is like so much part of the story of a Sealand product, is the uniqueness of the inside of your bag. Also being upcycled, also the sustainability credentials that it gives you. You can't not have it. But when there's no waste and you got to order for 20,000 bags, it's a fuck up. So we've had this happen in our journey. So we've learned through that. And
you said you had this happen in your journey. Like, can you speak about that moment?
So this is kind of where COVID plays in. So pre-COVID, we had a really nice relationship with the CTICC, Cape Town International Convention Center, and their main supplier of banners for the events, which was, I think, Scan Display. So these guys, they supply the convention center with banners, which, every week there's a new conference, which means every week you're getting a nice input of materials into your stock holding. And then COVID comes and there's no more conferences, and which means that there's no more banners coming. And at that point in time, we had so much coming from one source that we didn't see a need to have other sources. Whereas, you learn that it's good to diversify, have a variety of different sources, and have them strategically lined up, and, those kind of things. So we found out, we realized that we were running out of these banners. So in a time like that, you got to look at, well, what's the next best thing that you can do as an intermediary while working on a bigger picture plan. So the bigger picture plan was setting up strategic partnerships with the big retail groups who are always going to have them. And that's where we stand today. So we've now got those partnerships in place, and it's fantastic. But at that point in time, they weren't in place yet. But we needed to have a solution because we couldn't stop production because we had employees who were being paid to produce bags, and we could not produce the bags. It's just
people are waiting for bags.
Yeah, exactly. And the demand for the product is there. So the solution, again, like one of my main roles has been problems, like as a business owner, problem solving. So like every day you're facing different challenges and you gotta solve the different problems. So the way we solved this problem for that point in time was, well, let's source a material which looks just like it, a recycled material. So it's not a virgin fabric. So at least the material composite has got a sustainability story to it. Print the picture onto it, and then it still has the same aesthetic. We print the picture onto it on a large format. So ultimately just print our own advertising banners on recycled material,
right,
and use those, which it was for a short space of time. It was flipping expensive to do, but we don't have, we couldn't, or we could have gone and printed it onto the same material, virgin material, and done it. But that's just like, as a business, we didn't operate like that. So it wasn't an option, even though it to other companies, would have been an option. So yeah, I think those are the things, and those are the things which then it's important as a business to be transparent about and to talk about. And that's why people believe us. And, I make decisions where hand on heart, that if I get called out for something, that I can stand up and talk about it. Like, it wasn't ideal, but life's not always ideal.
Would you say that was one of the bigger challenges you experienced in your journey with Sealand?
I wouldn't pinpoint it to one thing. I'd point it to that example, and that in terms of material sourcing, from waste material sourcing, because still today that material is critically important to us, yet the consistency and the flows of those materials is still creates anxiety to the point of last week. We were still like, we need to have elements of securing more of it. And it's not that it's not always consistent in the way that it comes in. So 2 days, the beginning of last week we were worried about it, then we received 2 tons. So then it's like, okay, cool, now we've got 2 tons of it, which is we're going to be good for a while. But it's more about and this is the continuous work on it, is to bring in more consistency. But at the end of the day, when somebody's saying here's material, you can't say, no, I don't want it today, I want it next week Wednesday.
No, you take it.
Yeah. And that's also all part of building those relationships and doing it in a way which is less ad hoc and more of a process and a system behind it.
So supply chain issues, it's quite a big thing for companies that have a similar type of business model where they rely on basically reused stuff in order to make their product. Do you think this is like one of the main reasons companies don't go the sustainable route? Because I've always wondered to myself, like, it's 2024 now. If we were to look at all the different businesses being developed and created, how many of them follow sustainable business models? My guess is probably not many. And I'm wondering why. Like, if you've got a choice, why not just make it sustainable?
Yeah. Well, I think in terms of startups today versus startups 10 years ago, there's definitely more startups now who are building those principles in. So like, let's just give ourselves credit that there definitely are more people considering it. The challenge for the big companies is that it's very difficult to implement change. And let's talk about why are people not doing it? Why is it difficult to change? And for one, is it's expensive. Like, it's definitely more expensive to operate in a very sustainable way. Like, it's just, it is what it is. So either you're selling a product for a higher price, which is why we sell products for a higher price. But not everybody, if you've established a market in a particular price category, you can't just go and increase your prices. So, if you know what I mean. It's also the accessibility to knowledge and to material. So, there's not huge availability to, if we talk about a knowledge factor, at least in this country, there's no like directory which you can just, or platform you can go on to just get insights around, okay, I want to build this product in a sustainable way. It's not just all there and available. There's not like a material index which is going to tell you all these things, and like they are available, but they're not easy to come by, or they're expensive to subscribe to, or and then the materials themselves are expensive. Try go and buy organic cotton or hemp versus normal cotton or polyester. It's ridiculously expensive in comparison. And then you're paying for the certifications. The certifications are very difficult to come by, and they're very expensive. The availability of these things also is like, yes, they're becoming more available, but because they're not that readily available, the scarcity factor drives the price up. So the more that people are demanding it, the more that the supply is going to be there, the lower the price can become. But for the people, the front runners like Sealand, who are, establishing this awareness and the importance of it, we're having to either import materials, we're having to work with local industry to develop the materials, or we're working with the limited amount which is available at a premium price point. All of which, importing, working with local, or they all cost a lot. So the cost component is a difficult one. Access to resource and knowledge is difficult.
But I mean, you did it.
Yeah, 100%.
So
I'm not. Yeah, but I like a challenge, and I'm also, in the for so many years, even still today, like our advertising is different to others. Like it's more educational than advertising. So the whole objective I've tried to create through building Sealand's brand is, build this aspirational brand, but to talk with an educational voice. And it's not like a scientific or academic educational voice. It's more layman terms. Like I grew up as dyslexic. Like I struggled to read, which I struggled to absorb, digest information when reading it. Visually, I'll look at something, I'll dissect it quickly and understand it straight away. Like put my hands under this table, I can straight away tell you how this table is constructed. But read something and try and like digest that, it's much more difficult for me. So therefore, I wanted to make sure that the way we create our educational voice and the way we put our responsibility reports out, or whatever, whenever we're talking in an educational way, it must be in a way which is like easily understandable to anybody, because then we have more impact.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's totally possible. I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses for why people aren't being sustainable. Everyone must sort their shit out and become more responsible in the way they operate. And even just like individuals at home, like it's not that difficult. You just need to start to make a little bit of change. It's not about like changing or flipping your life upside down.
Small
just
little
start with little
incremental
things and just do them consistently.
In terms of startup capital, how much did it require to get Sealand off the ground?
It wasn't a lot. Myself and the guy who I partnered with, Mike, we both had a bit of buck. Well, a bit of bucks. I think we both put in like, it was small. We both put in, I can't remember the exact amount, but it really wasn't. It wasn't like it was millions of rands. Like we put in maybe like 100,000 rand, or there was some infrastructure which we were able to utilize, which he had access to, some machinery and some machinists from a business which he was involved in previously. We worked for free, like we weren't paying ourselves salaries and stuff in the beginning. Then it was really just getting things going.
Were you making the backpacks at this stage?
I wasn't sewing them. I had sewers, but I can't remember exactly, but it was myself and Mike. He was like running more of the production, the business side, and there was me who was doing the design, the creativity, the branding, the marketing, and that side of things. And then I had a designer who knew pattern making. So I'd conceptualize the designs, work with her on sampling, pattern making, and then a machinist. I think we had about 5 machinists. And then we were selling products at, there's a place in Cape Town called the Biscuit Mill. So we had a store there, which I had prior to Sealand, I had a product and furniture design company, and I had a store there. So then I swapped my personal product design store to be a Sealand store. And that's where we first started trading.
Was your idea when you started, like with this little store in at the Biscuit Mill, Did you envision this becoming like big at this stage, or was this kind of like a side thing that you were doing?
I definitely had dreams for it to become something great, but I wasn't like fixated on like this is how big it's gonna be. Um, and I still don't have that mindset. I still like I'm reminded by other people, whether it's my brother's friends or family or people who I bump into who like, oh my gosh, Sealand is this or Sealand is that. But in my mind, I don't see it like that. I just see it as this thing which I wake up to do and I love doing, and I do it with the people I do it with are really cool people. So yes, I'm more driven to like develop different products and to open another shop. And obviously, I've got aspirations of what I want it to be, but that's not like the driver of it. I do it because I just enjoy doing it. I love what it stands for, and we've built it in a way where the people who work in the business are cool people to be around. We've made it an office culture, which is a fun place to be, and we're doing things which I believe in. Gives me an element of flexibility and freedom in my life, and yeah,
For people listening to this, so this podcast is geared for two different types of people. The first one is aspiring entrepreneurs, so people who haven't started anything yet but want to, and then the other type of person would be people who are working more of like a corporate job but are wanting to quit that and follow their idea, their dream. The reason I asked about the startup capital is just because a lot of people have ideas, and they want to make them reality. But I think a lot of people think they need much more than they do.
Yeah, for sure. So I suppose it all depends on what you're looking to do. Like if you want to be the new Tesla, you're going to need some money. But at the same time, like I could have said the same thing as like if you want to be the next Patagonia, you're going to need some money. But we didn't. Yes, you need a little bit of money. We had to pay rental, and luckily we were able to start retailing straight away and generating money. And quite quickly we got a kiosk at the waterfront, which was a really nice cash generator and so on. But if I dial it back, when I grew up, I was always creative, and I was always like intrigued in unique things and unique solutions and design. And my parents were very entrepreneurial, so like always dinner time, like dining at dinner, we'd always sit around the table for dinner, and we'd always have healthy discussions around cool ideas and new products and new business ideas and this and that. So like that was just ingrained in me, and throughout, and then studying art, studying design, I was always like entrepreneurial. I'd like make things and then sell them, or I'd buy things and fix them and sell them. And one of my best mates, he was very much the same way. So like we were this little like
This is mine.
young no, this was long before that. This was me growing up as like a young teenager.
Okay.
Yes. So I kind of never pictured myself working for somebody else. As soon as I could start working, the first job I ever got was, and it wasn't for very long, I worked in a surf shop, and that's kind of like the only time really that I like worked for somebody else. I was like a pizza delivery guy, and then I went and did the time in America, and like I worked at a fancy restaurant, but I wasn't the guy like serving the people in the restaurant. I was the guy getting the people from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain in like a big open air sled being pulled by a snowcat. Like, so just talking to people and having a good time.
Did you manage to keep those first jobs that you got? Were you ever fired?
No, I've never been fired.
So you quit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just, got beyond them. And yeah, so like pre-professional, like studying, I did work some bar jobs, and I had to make money. I wasn't just getting given money. So I had to have the like pre-professional jobs besides my little side hustle deals that I was doing, buying and building things or fixing things and selling things. I was, worked in the surf shop, was pizza delivery guy. I worked in a bar, did those kind of things. Then I did some traveling. Then I studied. And when I studied, I did a project where the objective of the project was to make a 5,000 Rand profit. which now, like in hindsight, is not a lot, but then it was quite a big deal. So basically, you had to design a product in a commercial way in which you could then sell it, and the minimum profitability that could come out of the project to pass was 5,000 rand, and that's where I started my first little business: was design some products, supply to a design store, and then continue to supply them. And that's where then I started to design more products and sell them through an e-commerce store and through a few different wholesale accounts. And
E-commerce store, like you built your
yeah,
own
I had my own e-commerce store. So it was like pre-Shopify. It was a company
WooCommerce?
called Shopstar. It was like the first in this country. It was a South African, it's kind of like a Shopify, but it was a South African designed one. And I was one of like the original accounts on there. And that's where I would sell my products through. So that was my website.
So what year is this now? Like this is
probably like 2010.
Man, so this is going way back, and this is before most people even knew what an e-commerce store was. Like, how did you figure that out? Like, how did you build the store?
I think then at that time I was still like doing biscuit mills, selling through the markets. I had different stalls at markets, so I was selling products at markets. I was identified also, like then I did it used to be the design and Derby. I was like, what was it called? The young, I forget it, but there was like a panel of like young designers, emerging designers. And so I was like part of that. And so I started to get my name out there, the products I was doing. I had a few products which became quite successful and quite well known. And through that, I suppose I was identified as when these guys were creating this new website platform and identifying who are the young South African design stars they want to have on their site. I was identified as one. And then they helped me build my site with them and helped me get my site up and running and going.
And how many sales would you make on that site?
Not a huge amount. I mean, at that time I was living at home, so like I didn't have huge expenses, but I was still generating an income for myself to do the basic things which I wanted to. But I certainly wasn't like printing money.
Okay.
But then I also started to realize, like, what are the more successful products, which are more like scalable products, how to sell more than just one at a time to one customer and start tapping into a corporate industry. Yeah. And that's, I suppose, they're all these. So my journey started like through those, and and I think that's how everyone's journeys are. It's stepping stones. You can't just like arrive at success. No. There's the whole backstory behind it. It's like all these stepping stones and journeys and learnings and decisions and, forks in your journey, which kind of navigate you to where I found myself today. And from today going forward, I'm going to continue to have to do that. Tomorrow's going to have a new set of challenges, and whether it's people challenges or product challenges or whatever they may be, health challenges or personal challenges. You have to face them and embrace them and figure out how to solve them, which is going to then take you to your next step.
Right.
And you're going to just carry on doing that. I don't think that ever stops.
Yeah. Let's fast forward to 2018. I believe that is when you got your first investment for Sealand.
Yeah, so 2017, I think it was 2017 to 2018. So yeah, so basically then myself and Mike felt we needed to take the brand internationally. And in order to do that, we need to go to this big trade show, which we'd been told is like, this is, if you go and you get a stall at this trade show, you're going to come back with like millions of rands worth of orders. So, invest money into that. So we took on investment, which was a family living in South Africa, but they were from Europe and they were planning to relocate back to Europe. So it seemed like a perfect opportunity to help us, hold stock over in Europe. We wanted to go to Europe. And we just said Europe. I was thinking like it's all the same, but it's not. And anyways, we ended up getting a store, doing the whole thing, invested, I don't know, over 500,000 rand into doing this, building a store, getting stock there, getting ourselves there, accommodation, the whole works. We came home, we got no orders. It was like a royal stuff up. Not because like we're rookies. Like we didn't go there prepared. We went there, we had invested all our money in like the infrastructure and setting up and not in any marketing. And we hadn't gone and we didn't like prospect clients. We didn't know what we were doing really. But that was a lesson. It was like a super hard lesson learned, but there are all these school fees you pay along the way.
Yeah.
Subsequently, we realized actually trade shows aren't for us at that point in time in our life. And what we need to do is showrooms. And we managed to find a guy who represents brands, and he represents portfolios of the right type of brands. And because he's got a selection of brands that all kind of speak to one another or to the same type of buyer, he then a few times a year showcases the range of products from those brands and invites focused buyers to the showroom. And it's a way more focused approach. And we did that. And after the first showroom, we collected orders. It's way less capital intensive as well, because it's his showroom. You just pay your way to be a part of his showroom. And you've got this captive audience of people coming to see your product. You can got them there. You know they're coming. You can plan your strategize your presentation, your speech to whoever the buyer, whether it's Selfridges. The first account we got, I think, was Selfridges. Selfridges is, globally renowned as one of the biggest and best retailers in the world. So it also really helps, like when you capture one of the best initially, it makes others think that you're great. So that really helped us.
And at this time, it's just you and Mike.
Yeah.
That's the team.
Well, no, myself and Mike and those investors, which is a husband and wife.
Okay.
And the husband, he had just sold his renewable energy company, which is more in wind, and his wife, she was going to be more actively involved. He was going to be more of like a silent role, like helping advise and finance and stuff like that. So then what happens is, I'll give you the gist of the story,
okay,
which is fine. It is confusing, and I don't know where one would have actually found the information on this, because I don't think it's publicly out there. But so this couple, they buy into Sealand, and we think it's fantastic. Their relationship is cool. We think it's, now that we've got money, all the problems are solved. We go to Europe and come back, and it's a massive fail. We've spent all this money. And then we think, okay, well, it's fine. We've got finance partners. We can just get some more money. But it didn't work like that. And
why not? What?
Well, that's, again, you learn, like, in terms of being very clear and understanding things right from the beginning, as opposed to just assuming certain things. And like, assumptions are so dangerous. You assume one thing versus having a clear agreement in place as to, like, if this happens, this is how we're going to deal with it. If this happens, this is how we're going to deal with it. Anyway, so then we needed more money, because, our business was always losing money. We were growing in terms of a business, and our revenue was growing and our brand presence was growing, but the profitability was non-existent from the beginning, which is why we needed investment, which is why we thought we needed to export product. And then we still needed money. And then we said, okay, well, let's crowdfund. So then we went to Kickstarter, which was, like, at the time, the hype of you need money, and, entrepreneurial startups go to Kickstarter. So then we invested more money, which we had, into Kickstarter.
Like building a campaign,
because Kickstarter is a huge amount of preparation that goes into not only, like, designing a product, but also designing your campaign of how you're going to pitch it onto Kickstarter. So we did that, and that actually went really successfully. So we overshot our target, which was all great. But then the challenge came was, okay, well, now we've got to, like, deliver on our promises and produce all this product, which was quite a task at hand. But we did that. But what that did was, it basically told other people, i.e. Adrian's of the world, that Sealand's a cool brand, but they're trying to raise funds. Like, why are they trying to raise funds? If they had enough money, would they trying to be raising funds? There's very few brands. There are some that strategically do that to like, that's part of their strategic revenue model.
Interesting.
But very few. So, like, that's one of their revenue models, is running Kickstarters.
Right.
As opposed to us, who are like, we need money, so we need to do this in order to raise the funds in order to carry on.
I see.
So what it did is it basically said to other investors, well, these guys are potentially seeking investment. So we then had a couple of different people approach us, and that's where we then started having conversations, and we know it was just the timing just happened in a way in which it allowed um, the original investment to get out, because it kind of felt like they were kind of keen to step out, and it gave an opportunity for a new investor to step in, and that transition happened quite seamlessly, which was cool.
So they sold their shares then?
Yeah. So they sold
Okay.
their shares. Adrian bought their shares, and basically got
So-
somebody who then, learning from our first mistakes, well, yeah, the lessons we learned in the first investment, we then I suppose, which is more just around like clarity, communication, clear agreements, understandings, and those kind of things, and also knowing that there's so much more to investment than just the money. Like, money is one component, but if you have something which is good or desirable, like, the money is the far lesser important component, because there's plenty of money out there to be given, because anybody's going to give you money is they believe in it and they see that their money's going to grow. And people who have money, the reason why they've got money is because they've been smart with how to grow it. So if you have something good, it's not hard to get the money, but it's hard to find the resources that come with the money. And you need that strategic part, is understanding what are the resources that you need accompanying the money.
So Adrian invested and he went on to become your CEO, right?
Yeah.
But
not initially. Initially, he just played sort of a silent role and gave advice, and which was cool. I mean, he was like a business mentor to myself and to Mike, and gave us great advice, because he not in retail. Like, he was by no means, he had no knowledge and experience in retail, but that's kind of how Adrian operates. He gets involved in these things, so he actually doesn't have a huge amount of knowledge in, other than just like badass business skills and drive to make things succeed, and people skills, like people and culture, he really understands, and then business, and he applies all of those with a mindset of beginner, and learns. And now, I wouldn't call him a retail expert now, but he's a lot more knowledgeable than what he was, and he's a CEO of a retail brand, of a great retail business, which is doing unique, interesting things. And I think that's also, it's why it's valuable, and like, because you're not super knowledgeable in doing it, this is the way you're supposed to do it. You do it in a unique way, which my view is, if you approach a problem from outside of the box, you're going to come out with a unique solution. And in this day, and if you want to come out with something which is like the same as everybody else, it's got to be like highly competitive in price. But if you don't want to compete on price, you got to compete on uniqueness. And if you're competing on uniqueness, then you can dictate your price.
Who was the CEO before Adrian stepped up to do that? Mike was the CEO. What was it like? I'm sure you guys chatted, for Mike to step down from being CEO and allowing someone else to do it. Like, how did that feel for you guys?
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was a difficult time. It was a complicated, challenging time within the business period. And it was a time where we weren't sure how things were going, what was going to happen, whether the business was going to carry on, whether it was not going to carry on. COVID was there. There's all kinds of challenges in the business at that point in time, primarily caused by COVID. COVID was
So your sales took a dip at this point?
Well, yeah, they just stopped
Entirely.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is now, beginning of 2020, where COVID arrives, and myself and Mike are running the business. We're like, it's just crazy. Things just stop. And that's where the major challenge came in with our partnership, in terms of not really, having a different view on how to navigate. And that's normal.
Yourself and Mike.
Yeah, myself, Mike, and Adrian, is just different views on how to navigate different situations, and that just results in us going different ways.
How do you get through COVID, man? What did you guys do differently? What were those solutions?
Yeah, it was one where it was like ultimate transparency internally with our staff, because we couldn't afford to pay everybody full salaries. So we had very honest conversations with all of our staff. But those conversations were also saying, well, we believe in this business and we believe in you. So if you can come with us on this journey, we will get through. And let's all put our minds together and think of, well, what are the kind of opportunity, what are the things that we can do to leverage our brand in order to generate money when we can't sell product, or we can't deliver on product, and we can't produce product. So we ran this campaign called the 51 campaign. I think it was called the 51, and we just called it 51. Basically, we gave a 51% discount. Okay. And 51, because 51 it just sounded better than 50. And like everyone's talked about a 50% discount, but a 51 just sounded different, and it was like a talking point. We'd never discounted before, so it was like a massive thing for Sealand. Like we're not a discount brand, so we then ran this. I can't remember. It was also a limited period of time. I think it was maybe 21 days, or there was like a time frame to this 51% discount, and we came up with like a very emotive narrative, very honest, but emotive, all of which was about supporting this local brand in order to keep our employees employed. Pay now and we'll deliver when we can. And people backed us. People got behind us in a way which we could not believe. And we generated a huge amount of online revenue, way more than we ever expected. And then
how were you getting this campaign out there? Were you just running ads?
E-commerce. Yeah, social media, website.
Okay. So you're paying like ad social, like on Instagram, for example, you can pay for an ad campaign.
Yeah, so we would have been doing some paid media on Instagram. We would have been doing some paid on Facebook, on Google Ads, on our webs. We would have then been promoting it on our website. We may have even done one or two radio, or I don't even know. Maybe I can't remember if we did radio. Yeah, so we then went and did that, and what that did was, and then we also applied for a special permission manufacturing permit to create, what is it, PPT, personal protective PPE, personal protective equipment for face masks. So then we got the certificates to produce face masks. So we started getting back into the factory and we started producing face masks, but we also started to produce some of the bags. And what it meant then is when we could all go back to production was we had a huge backlog of orders, as opposed to coming back and then being like, okay, now what are we going to produce? We're going to like overproduce product, not knowing what to produce. But we had a huge order book for all the people who had supported us on e-commerce, which gave ourselves at least like 3 or 4 months of work, which is great. And then we were producing face masks, and next minute, like the Sealand face mask was the it face mask. Everybody like wanted a Sealand face mask. And that showed us that Sealand can produce more than a bag. And that's where we realized that the brand was more than just a bag brand.
Yeah. I mean, because now you guys I think you just released one of your new sweaters as well, right? So you're going into clothes now.
Yeah, definitely. So clothing is a big focus now for us as a brand. Like, not we're transitioning, but we're just treating ourselves more as a lifestyle brand and a brand which speaks to the Sealander. And the Sealander is somebody who, I suppose if I describe myself as a Sealander, I want to be able to wake up. If I go for a walk on the beach, to work, to drinks after, to dinner, and back home, I want to be able to utilize one set of Sealand products, which I can dress up and dress down and utilize throughout my day without having to be like, oh no, okay, I need to iron this and then I need to change that to this, and to have diversity, versatility within the garments and the products we produce, to be able to be utilized throughout that day. A shirt which I can, dress up to the office, but that same shirt, because of the material and the shape and the cut of that shirt, I can also use when I go for a hike up the mountain or for a mission up the west coast to surf. I can fold the collar to be a sun guard. It's breathable materials. It's natural fiber. Um, it it's just got smart natural properties.
How much harder is it to produce a shirt versus a bag? Or how much more or
So
less complex?
they're very different. The bags have got elements of upcycled into them. Not much of the clothing is upcycled. Most of the clothing works more with natural fibers. And then sometimes there's blends of natural fibers and recycled synthetics. So there's different complexities at different stages. So the source, yeah, it's hard to say. I would say the bag is more complicated for sure than the garment. But it's more about doing the garment in the right way, sourcing the right material, because it's easy to make a t-shirt, but to make a t-shirt which uses the right materials is difficult.
Yeah.
And those materials, you can spend years just debating which is the right, whether importing hemp from China because you can't produce it locally, or using local non-organic cotton because there's not local organic cotton produced and available. Like, which one's better, the non-organic local or the imported organic?
Carbon, yeah, from the airplanes releasing carbon into the air.
Yeah, and what an interesting stat that I learned recently is that in terms of your carbon emissions released, it's more damaging from a carbon perspective to put something on an airplane from 1,200 kilometers. So that's even closer than Johannesburg to Cape Town. But let's just say Joburg to Cape Town. It's more carbon intense to put something on an airplane in Joburg and fly it to Cape Town than it is to put something on a ship in from China to Cape Town.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, the economy of scale of putting multiple items onto one ship. So there's a lot more things on one ship than in what you can put into airplanes. That's one factor. The other factor is the energy intensity of flying an airplane or driving a truck. So I'm talking about airplane or truck from Joburg. So the airplane and the truck are the same. Let's just use them as the same vehicle. The airplane's even worse than the truck. But even just putting a garment on a truck from Joburg to Cape Town is worse than putting something onto a ship from China to Cape Town.
Yeah.
So you have the economy of scale. So you can put way more onto a container ship than you can onto a truck or a airplane. And the energy input into a truck and an airplane is far more than a ship. Also, a ship starts, goes, and stops. Truck and airplane also starts and goes, but the energy output is intense. Whereas a truck is stopping and stopping and starting and stopping. Yeah, it's quite fascinating. We've learned this also through some software which we've invested into, which we've been utilizing now to get more data-rich content.
I've always wondered when it comes to a lot of townships in South Africa, the municipal services don't necessarily go there, and trash collection, for example, is it's non-existent for many townships in South Africa. Could one collect trash like plastic waste from these townships and utilize that? Is that possible
for our product,
for example?
Not in its raw form for us. I mean, I suppose something could be made from it for our product or to sell, but that's not our model. We're not looking at how do we go and collect the waste and make the product. We work with, first and foremost, we need to develop a product which is going to last. Okay, so therefore you can't just go and collect any plastic waste and make it last in that form. It's going to have to go through a very complicated process in order to take a particular type of plastic waste and repelletize it, make it into pellets, make it into yarn, make it into a fabric, and that fabric is going to have a specific use on a particular product. Or we can go, and what we've done now, for instance, like if you look at these zip pullers over here as an example of like, okay, well, here we wanted to use some plastic waste. So we made these little customized zip pullers where we gathered different colors of oranges, and then we made like a little mold, and you injection mold that plastic into something, and then you get a little shape. So you can do that, but again, it still requires the machinery to shred it, melt it, mold it in like its basic form. And that's as opposed to going and saying, well, here's a Coke bottle, cut it up, and like, let's make a light out of it. That's upcycling. But in terms of our offer, and yes, we could do that, but we're deviating off what we actually do, like taking that plastic bottle and making a backpack from it within an upcycling way. It's not going to be a comfortable backpack and a long-lasting backpack made out of a Coke bottle unless it's melted down, made into a yarn, and made into a durable new fabric. But still, to get that fabric right to be good for bags takes time and takes a lot of technology. So there are plenty with the scrap collectors who walk around, they collect it, and what they will do is they'll go and sort the plastics and they'll take it to recyclers, and the guys will go and collect metal or tin and they'll take it to recyclers. That's great because they're doing sorting of recycling, and then it goes into the recycling streams, which is what you want.
I want to come on to the topic of mental health. If you look at your own sort of work schedule, how much of your time would you say is dedicated to your business versus just daily life? Do you have like a good split? Because a lot of entrepreneurs work from like 6 a.m. to, 11 p.m.
My mind doesn't really ever switch off from work, it's a tough thing to say. It's a bit of a sad thing to say, but not a sad thing to say. But that's the reality of like,
just the mic, yeah. Just make sure the mic's
yeah. When you have your mindset on achieving something and you start to see this machine running and the cost of keeping the machine running, it becomes difficult. And then you see the opportunities in which the machine can create. Then you realize like it's quite hard to switch off, or at least I find it very difficult to switch off. So it takes me probably a week at least to switch off. So I need to go away and have a week of like not engaging in my phone and my laptop, and only after those kind of 5 to 7 days will I truly start to be able to relax and not think about work. And otherwise, day to day, yes, I have balance. Like, middle of the day, I fetch my daughter from school and I take her home. And in the evenings, we cook and we make dinner and we have fun playing and stuff like that. But when I get a message from work, I'm still checking it and replying. And I know I shouldn't be. Like, I should be, but I shouldn't be. From a family perspective, I shouldn't be. From a work perspective, I should be. So it's always like they're contradictory, but those are the challenges which I suppose an entrepreneur or business owner grapple with. I love my work, which makes it easier, but also makes it more difficult to remove myself from work. And I have a busy mind, so I'm often thinking about things, even if I'm in at dinner and just chilling and there's conversation going on, I'm still thinking about what happened in the day or what I need to do tomorrow or the problems I'm currently needing to solve or the podcast I'm doing next week or why is this product not selling or it's been an amazing day of sales. So there's like a gazillion things that you can just be thinking about.
Do you bring these thoughts back home and share it with your partner? Is it something you guys take on together?
At times, not always. We generally will talk a little bit about our days. She's also a professional in her own right and holds like a very senior role. She's a creator in her own way, but more in food development, product of food. And yeah, so we often, share how our days were or challenges or things, funny things or exciting things which happen in our days. So we definitely talk about it. And then we'll also, sometimes ask for feedback or insights and stuff around particular things within the day.
Do you think there's any like methods that you would that you could use in your daily life to switch off? And like, what would you recommend for yourself and also for other people listening to this? Are you okay, by the way?
Surfing's
Is the back still fine?
yeah, all good. I just have to stand up every now and then. I mean, for me, surfing's the thing which has always helped me the most. Like when life gets busy or work gets hectic and there's a lot of things going on, or there's stresses or pressures or big decisions to be made, surfing's always been a place for me to go. And it's kind of like my meditation.
So you switched off then?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, it's one place where I can go, and for me, it's the fastest fix to like switching off and just being like present.
Right.
I've definitely dabbled in meditation, and meditation is great for many reasons. And through many podcasts I've listened to, it's definitely one of the most consistent forms of like peace and where you can switch off and just, have clarity through, business leaders and successful people. So for me, it's an element of meditation, but also my meditation is the ocean and surfing. And when I can't surf, then to try and have an element of a morning meditation. But it has become more difficult now with kids. I've got two young girls, and their alarm clocks is not always consistent. So, if they want to wake up at 3 a.m, then they can wake up at 3. But then hopefully they go back to bed. But generally, I've got to wake up pretty early in order to have some own time. My wife's much better than I am. But yeah, so I would say consistent for me. Surfing is a place where I can go have that really consistent environment of just switching off and being present, and especially if the conditions are a bit scary, because then you really have to focus.
True. Yeah.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah. I don't want to keep too much of your time anymore, because obviously we're going a bit over, and also you're back. I know you broke it about a couple of months ago. So in closing, I want to ask a simple question. If you could only surf in one more location for the rest of your life, what location would that be?
Sure, that's like that's
Is it South Africa?
That's a question I need to think about for a while. I mean, there's so many good waves in the world. It'd be hard to say a wave which I haven't surfed. And I kind of want to say Llandudno, because that's where I grew up and I've surfed my whole life. But at the same time, there's so many better waves in Llandudno. But Llandudno is just like, it's so beautiful in terms of like, if you don't surf, you don't know, because when you go to the Llandudno beach, it's beautiful, but your perspective is outward facing. So you stand on the beach and you look out to sea. Whereas when you're surfing, you're sitting out in the ocean and you've got this like this view of this amphitheater of like the most insane mountains, the most insane beach and these rocks. And it's like the water clarity is so clear. It's like generally very clean water in Llandudno. It's generally way too cold. But it's the wave which I've surfed my whole life. I've had so many good memories and moments in Llandudno. But there's plenty better waves in Llandudno. But I think I'd say Llandudno.
Okay, Llandudno it is. Yeah, it looks, I mean, especially if you walk along the rocks on the side there, man, it looks pretty sketchy from time to time at Llandudno.
Yeah, Llandudno is just, it's a serious wave. Like, it's definitely not a wave to be taken lightly. Actually, the last few weeks there's been a couple near drownings at Llandudno.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous beach. You get strong rips, quite shallow sandbanks. You get really big, powerful waves, super cold water. You have the rocks, which looks intimidating, but the rocks are generally it's the rips which are going to catch you. But that again, like, I grew up at Llandudno on the beach. I learned respect for the ocean from a young age. Understand how to read the ocean. So, I know how to play with the rips, or not play with the rips, but like utilize the rips, as opposed to somebody who doesn't understand the ocean, the way that the ocean, the currents and the water moves. To, they get stuck in a rip, they're going to just try to swim straight back into the rip, which is going to get tired, they're going to panic, and that's where everything goes wrong. As opposed to saying, well, I'm stuck in this rip, I can't paddle against it, so you should paddle at a 45-degree angle out, not in, out. So you go out, around, and back in where there's no rip. But it all depends on like how competent you are a swimmer, how big the waves are, depending on whether, theoretically you're told and taught to go 45-degree out, but you can also just go like perpendicular across from it and try. It all depends on like what your surroundings are. So those are all things which, for me is just second nature, understanding what it's doing. And it's been so like a beautiful process to start teaching my daughter this now. And like not only to get her out there to surf, but to teach her all the things that my dad taught me about the ocean. There's nothing more powerful than Mother Nature. Like humans can think that they know better, but the ocean and the weather will always overpower.
That's true.
You see when the rain comes in force or when the wind comes in force, it's nothing you can do besides watch with your eyes wide open and be like, this is hectic.
Yeah. Well, Jasper, thank you for your time. I hope your back's not worse after this. I've got some pretty bad neck problems, so I know what it feels like to stand or sit rather for long periods of time. But I really appreciate your time. I learned a lot, and I hope people listening to this also learned a lot.
Sure.
I'm sure they did. So thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. It's really cool to sit, have this kind of conversation with you. And yeah, I enjoyed it, and I do hope that there's value added for the listeners.